What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new episode of Bets and Banter, and today on the show, we're talking about UFC 312. It's going down in Sydney, Australia. You've got Dricus Du Plessis, the defending middleweight champion of the world, taking on Sean Strickland. Something's got to give. They had a close fight last time out, 48-47 Du Plessis on my scorecards, but ultimately a very close fight, closely contested. Both guys young, able to make some adjustments here. Fascinating main event. And by the way, the co-main event, what more could you ask for? You've got Zhang Weili, one of the most dominant champions in the history of women's MMA, taking on Tatianna Suarez, the uncrowned champion in a lot of people's opinion, somebody that's been one of the best fighters in the world, that has struggled with things outside the cage, her health, things that she could not control. Now she gets her opportunity. Let's see if she can lay claim to that title. The odds have shifted heavily in her favor. So we've got a great card to break down. We've got great guests on the horizon as well. And we've got the sharpest chat in the game. So thank you to each and every one of you guys. Smash the like button. If you're on social media, go ahead and hit that retweet. Let other people know and join the conversation. Let us know what you're thinking about these fights in the chat. But without further ado, let's bring in our very sharp guest, none other than Rich. Just win, baby. How you feeling today, my man?
Feeling sharp, bro. It's a late one for me. Fucking midnight here. So yeah, let's get into it so I can go to bed, man.
Hell yeah, we'll get it going, and we will be quick, fast, and to the point. We got Hyun Sung Park taking on Niamdragal Tumendembarel. I tried my best, guys, so if I butchered his name, it's a sincere apologies. I practiced at least twice before we got on the air. However, we got an interesting fight. Rich, why don't you start us off? How do you feel about this first fight of the night?
Yeah, I'm not even trying to pronounce that guy's name. His name's Tommy from now on, so that's what we're going to refer to him as. Yeah, and I like Tommy to win. He's going to get it done. I'm surprised by the line. I even seen him at plus 200 at one point. Just fucking stupid to me. I think it really should be a pick'em. If I seen Tommy as the favorite in this fight, it wouldn't have surprised me. Like, if you do the fucking research and watch the tape, man, Park's a fucking bum. His best bet is to take the back and get the rear naked choke, which he's done on many occasions. But he doesn't do it offensively. That's only come about when his opposition have chose to grapple him and his reverse position, or when he's dropped somebody. He's gone down to the mat and then took their back thereafter. He puts the body triangle in, which is nice. But yeah, I don't think he's a decorated jiu-jitsu player. I think it's purely, just opportunistic stuff when he gets these rear naked chokes. On the feet, he's wild, he's reckless, he gets dropped all the time. He got dropped against Choi twice. He got dropped against some fucker called Kiram. 9 fights, 8 finishes. So it's probably not going to see the scorecards. But on the other side, I like Tommy. I think he's good. I think he's underrated, undervalued. People are talking about he's got no ground game. He did fine against Hernandez. I bet Hernandez sub, got the money line. But yeah, not getting subbed by Hernandez. I don't think he's going to get subbed by Park. I think Hernandez is much better than Park. I think that he's got decent submissions on his side as well. 5 sub wins for Tommy, and they're not all rear naked chokes. He's got a couple of arm bars and different variations. He dropped Hernandez in the fight. He's got power in his hands. I heard the broadcast team talking about he's got judo and a sambo background. I don't know how extensive that is, considering he's fucking Mongolian. I don't imagine they've got a good program over there, but whatever. He's got good cardio. He showed that in the Hernandez fight as well. He doesn't accept bottom position when they're down on the ground. But I don't think he's going to initiate the wrestling or the grappling. Like I said, Park doesn't do that either. He's content to keep it on the feet. It took him fucking ages to get that bum out of there. Who was the guy he knocked out? Shannon Ross. He really should have subbed him in round 1. But like I said, he doesn't offensively wrestle. That's his biggest weapon in this fight. So yeah, it's a dog or pass situation. And I think people should be taking a shot on the underdog here, man.
Yeah, I tend to lean the same way. This is one that I have to do a little bit more tape study on, but just gut instinct, Tumendembarel felt like a wide price in this matchup. Last time out, I thought he kind of blew it against Carlos Hernandez. It was a fight that was within reach, kind of made some bad decisions. I think you could attribute some of that to UFC jitters, right? Guys go out there all the time, lay an egg in their first UFC contest, and then they get a little more comfortable in the UFC and they go out there and perform. We listened to MVP over the weekend say, hey, even after this fight, I still don't feel like I'm fully at home in the UFC. He's like 3 fights deep in his career with the promotion. So I think that's just something to keep in the back of our mind. Meanwhile, on the other side, you mentioned it, Hyun-Sung Park knocking out Shannon Ross. I mean, just like wipe that off the record as far as I'm concerned. It's not an important win. One of the worst chins in the history of, UFC level mixed martial arts. And that's no disrespect. It's just the observable reality, right? The guy's getting one punch knocked out in multiple flyweight fights. It's just things that you're not used to seeing. So I think that you look at the Tumen Dembrell side, and number one, he's a very aggressive finisher. I think he reminds me of a lesser skilled Vinicius Oliveira, right? What does Vinicius Oliveira do well? Is his striking that good? It's all right. Is his grappling stupendous? It's okay, but he just fights really well because he's a dog. He wants to be there. He's trying to scrap. He's trying to hurt you. If he sees an opportunity, he's going to take it. And I think the same thing about Tumen Dembrell. If you give up your neck, if you make a bad decision, he's going to try and squeeze it. He's going to try and break your arm. He's going to try and do something to hurt you. And then on top of that, if he is able to hurt you, he's trying to track you down and finish you any which way, right? I remember seeing, he hurts the guy, follows him with the foot sweep, and then chokes him fully unconscious, drops him like a sack of potatoes. It's one of the most violent chokes you'll see in the octagon, right? Like just put the guy out cold. And I think that he could do the same thing here potentially. So I think Park maybe rates slightly higher as a prospect long-term, but 29 years of age compared to 26 for Tumen Dembrell. They're both on the right side of 30. Slight size advantages for Tumen Dembrell as well. What's not to like at the plus money number? I think he's the more aggressive finisher of the two. So he's going to go out there and fight hard for your dollar. And to your point, Rich, the last thing we'll mention here, Carlos Hernandez, or at least the last thing I'll mention, Carlos Hernandez, high quality fighter. A guy that it took 28 pro and amateur fights before he got dropped by Tatsuro Taira. Now y'all know what time it is. Tatsuro Taira here to bang on the feet. But that's what it took, right? 28 pro and amateur fights. He's a good fighter. He's a very proven guy. He fought very good guys on the amateur scene, fought very good guys as a professional as well. So I just think that this is a little bit of a prospect versus prospect fight, whereas last time it was a more savvy veteran type of fighter, a guy who's a crafty journeyman type guy against the Tumen Dembrell making his debut. So I think this is a much more winnable opportunity for Tumen Dembrell. And last time out, he was a victim of his own mistakes in decision making. So I think now he can do a little bit better. What about you, Rich? Anything to add here?
Yeah, I just wouldn't say it's prospect versus prospect. I'd say it's bum versus bum, and one's plus 200.
Hey, fair enough. I just mean to say prospect status, as in both guys under 30, both guys less than 10 professional fights. They can obviously develop from here. But right now, I certainly don't think that they're destined for top 10 or something. All right, next up, my man. We got Quillen Salkild taking on Anshul Jubilee. And Rich, I don't know if he was a mush of the week or what he was in relation, but I know that you were all over Mike Breeden against Anshul Jubilee, and that was a really wise decision. So why don't, in fact, I'll lead us off on this one. I think you led us off on the last one. I think Quillen Salkild is a good fighter. Just bare bones. I think he's got pretty decent skills. He's still a relatively green fighter, right? 7-1. Same thing for Anshul Jubilee. The younger fighter in Quillen Salkild, the bigger fighter here. I think he's the better fighter on the feet. And the last thing I'll say before I kick it over to you, I just think he has more fight in him. I think we saw Anshul Jubilee when the going gets tough, when he's in a dogfight, he doesn't want to be there, right? He kind of backed down from the ruckus. And I think Salkild, like a typical Australian fighter, he's all about it. So unless Anshul Jubilee is able to, outskill him in all positions or hurt him badly on the feet, I just think this guy's going to outwork him, out-hustle him, out-fight him, out-dog him. And I think Quillen's going to win the fight and probably finish this guy and get him out of the UFC. What do you think about this one, Rich?
Yeah, first of all, he was born mush of the week. This guy is shit, shouldn't be a fighter. He's a half decent, like quote unquote athlete. He's got good cardio. He throws out good volume, but he lacks heart. He's a good hammer, but a bad nail. He really should have beat Breeden. Breeden was nothing special. I can't even believe it, man. Like when I rewatched it, because obviously I was all hyped up at the time, I didn't really take it in. But yeah, doing tape for this and rewatching it, he was just like a deer in headlights in round 3, and nothing really happened. He got hit one time and was like, what the fuck? And it was the, you know, the dog barking. It was like the chants of USA. It just completely broke him, man. He froze in there, and never seen anything like it, man. It complete falling apart. Yeah, I like this guy, this fucking Aussie guy. What's his name? Sal killed. He's going to wrestle. He's going to look for a submission. I think that's the only way to play this fight, to be honest, because I think he's green himself. Like I said, Jubilee is complete shit, but the line is wide for somebody making their debut. And I've seen it on Dana White Contender Series, man. He got the jitters even on there. He wasn't comfortable. He kept shooting for takedowns. He was far out. Yeah, he got him eventually, and he was able to push himself through that fight. But like I say, if he does that here, gets the jitters and doesn't get his takedowns, he's not that great on the feet. And like I said, Jubilee does throw volume. He is willing to fight until, you know, the going gets tough. But I just don't know how tough this fucking Sal kid is to fucking put it on him, man. So yeah, I'd like the submission. But if he doesn't get it in round 1 or 2, and you know, he doesn't break Jubilee, there is a world where Jubilee can come back and maybe break him. You know, he's fighting at home. There's a lot of pressure on that. He's a big favorite as well. I'm sure he's aware of that. So yeah, the only way I'd look to play it is submission for the Aussie. He is a black belt. He has got a 6-inch reach. He does have all the advantages on his side. He's got a slick triangle, a slick guillotine that I've seen on tape as well. So yeah, I'm all about the sub. And I've watched his interview. He said he's going for it. He said he's going to wrestle. So let's see it, man.
All right. Looking at fight numbers, I just wanted to shout out the best available prices on the fights that we've talked about so far. So we talked about Hyun-Sung Park, minus 215 at Circa Sportsbook right now, the best available price. The comeback on Tumen Dembrell, plus 195, best available on Pinnacle Sportsbook. We're looking now at Quillen Salkilled, the fight we're talking about right now, minus 550, BetMGM, best available price. The comeback on Anshul Jubilee, plus 465 at Circa Sportsbook, best available. And, you know, this is a fight where some people are saying, Danny was saying the decision at plus 800. Interesting. Okay. Because I was going to say he's definitely not plus 800. But yeah, plus 465 on Jubilee. You know, when he was a big favorite in his last fight, it's definitely a big market correction. But I also just think Salkilled is a guy that's probably going to be favored, you know, in a bunch of lower level UFC fights. I think he is the genuine article. So should be an interesting scrap, but I'm happy to move along to the next one unless you got anything to add here, Rich.
Yeah, I just say about that decision, I understand it's a big price and why not, and sure it could happen, but he got took down 3 times by Kim, who's a nobody. And when he did get taken down, he didn't have much to get back to his feet. So I just think if this Aussie has his way and he does get him to the mat, he's just going to be a fish down there and soon after get sub, man. I like sub round 1, sub round 2 also, if the price is right.
Nice. I'm pulling up some odds right now just so I can quote some prop numbers as well. Looking at this fight, I'm seeing only one book has come to market with the props on this fight. So I even don't want to mush anything. We'll let the market materialize a little over the course of the week. You guys can use your context clues and do your own research. But next up, guys, we got Kevin Jusei taking on Jonathan Mikalev. And why don't you start us off on this one, Rich?
Yeah, so I was happy to see Jusei get fucked up by Battle because I like Battle and it was a great performance and I want to see him do good things. But I also don't like Jusei. He's another guy who I think is an athlete. He likes to point fight in there unless he can break you. You know, you succumb to the pressure. And I think he's going to win this one, but by decision, just purely because it's this, can't even pronounce his name, Mikaf. Is that how you say it? We're calling him the Aussie guy. Yeah, so this Aussie guy, you know, he's making his debut. He's not good on the feet. He has some okay submissions, opportunistic ones. I've seen him pull up a triangle real slickly and get a sub on the regional circuit, but he hasn't got the striking to compete. And for all the bad things I say about Jusei, he is kind of technical. You know, he'll throw the calf kick, he'll keep his range, good range management, good distance. His experience will tell in this fight. And yeah, I suppose he'd be cautious, you know, coming off the TKO loss that he had, and he just want to get back in the win column. So Jusei by decision, but boring fight in my opinion. Not really interested in a bet.
Fair enough. You know, I think this is going to be our first major point of disagreement. You know, I'm not a Kevin Jusek guy. I'll do more tape on this fight because I haven't rewatched Mikolev since he was on Contender Series, but I thought he was pretty solid on Contender Series. I remember I bet him by submission. I bet the ends by submission as well. Shouted those out in my article. And if you look back, Adu, I think, was on like a 4-fight submission streak or something coming into that fight, but you could tell he was in like crazy wild scrambles and stuff. I don't really expect that from Jusei. I do think he's got pretty decent takedown defense. Kind of keeps that upright stance, the judo hips. He's not an easy guy to bowl over. But the other thing is, you look at Kiefer Crosby. I mean, just not a very high level guy, right? No disrespect. The guy that needed a bunch of work to his game, gassed out in like 2 minutes in that fight. I think he took it on short notice, flew halfway across the world, just everything kind of working against him there. Then Kenan Song, a guy who's back past his best days. It just seems like he's on the other end of his career, not really competing the same way anymore, not really, with the same piss and vinegar, and the chin's starting to go. So I'm not really sure about either of those wins as like benchmarks. Brian Battle, I was pretty sure was going to whoop his ass, and I thought Brian was going to submit him. And tell you the truth, Rich, like if Brian wanted to submit him, I think he submits him. If Brian wanted to just outpoint him to a decision and just stay on the outside, he could have done that too. But he was just walking this guy down. And by the middle of round 2, this guy did not want the ruckus anymore. And while I agree with you that Mikolev does not have the technical acumen of Brian Battle or even of Giuseppe, I do think he brings that pressure style that we just saw Giuseppe fold up the tent after 7 minutes. If Mikolev has a typical Australian chin and he can walk through some shit, Alden Bates finished him, I think, in the 4th round. This is all from memory. So if I butcher any of this, guys, apologies. This is from memory. But I'm pretty sure Alden Bates finished him in like the 4th round. Alden Bates deserves a shot on Contender Series. Like the guy has gone through a pretty tough regional and he's like 9-3. And if you look at his losses and whatever, it's all solid enough. He's fought good guys. He's beaten good guys. So Alden Bates, I don't think is like a horrible loss for him. And then you get the Giuseppe side. I don't think he's got bad losses either. But this is like, for me, what would otherwise be like a Hex MMA championship fight or something like that. And you got a 25-year-old with a slight reach advantage who I think's probably got the cardio advantage. And I think he's probably got a little bit of grappling upside in extended jiu-jitsu exchanges if he gets it to the mat. So I just think that there is enough upside for me to think it's a dog or pass situation. I'm just not a Giuseppe guy, never was. So that's kind of the way I see this one.
Yeah, I don't want people thinking I like Giuseppe either. I just think he wins this fight.
Fair play. I'll watch a little more tape on this one. Like I said, I haven't rewatched Mikolev in quite some time. All right, next up, my man, we got Cody Steele taking on Rong Zhu. And I don't remember which of us is supposed to go first on this one, but I'll go here. I think Cody Steele is a good prospect, man. He's 29 years of age. He's still on the right side of 30, 155 pounds. It's time to go right now. He's got to move up in his career. And if you look at his jiu-jitsu acumen, Chris Taco Padilla exposed Rong Zhu once again, as being a subpar grappler at the UFC level. I think that Cody Steele, if he needs to do that, could do the same thing. But also, I think that Cody Steele could knock him out on the feet as well. I don't think that Cody's super technical on the feet. I think he's all right on the feet. I think his technique is coming along. But I do think he's an absolute brick shithouse of a man that throws with a lot of weight behind his shot. So I think he could absolutely hurt somebody bad on the feet. And he's starting to fall in love with the power in his hands. But I think if he gets stung in this fight and he starts wrestling Rong Zhu, I think he'll probably take him down, take his back, and finish him. So ultimately, I think Cody wins this fight and probably finishes. How about you, Rich?
Yeah, I agree. I just think it'd be a decision, man. This Steele guy, I think I bet on him submission before in his last fight. It pisses me off, man. And then I go look at his record, and he's got a couple of rear naked chokes. He's got like fucking 20 grappling, fights on his Tapology. And he goes to decision a lot, man. I haven't watched any of them, so I'm kind of like just Tapology in this. But for all of his like accolades of being this jiu-jitsu guy, I haven't seen it yet. And I don't know. When I look at the Rong Zhu side, he's been subbed a few times, 4 in fact. But he's got decent cardio. He seems like a stubborn fucker where he doesn't get discouraged when you keep trying to take him down. He's got a decent sprawl. And some of the MMA fights I watch for Steele, he doesn't put the hooks in He reminds me of that kid in PFL who goes out with Dakota fucking, what's her name? The British bitch. The young kid. Yeah, he wrestle fucked, man. He could have subbed this bum. I bet on him by sub. And yeah, he just didn't put the hooks in, didn't put the triangle on when he took the back. He was just happy to rinse and repeat and take down. And I think that's what Steele's about. He doesn't put the body triangle on. He doesn't put the hooks in. And yeah, I just think he's going to 30-27 this guy with some wrestling. If he's smart, if he stands up and gives Rongzu a chance to knock him out, then more for him. But yeah, that's my reason for leaning to the decision over the submission.
Nice. Glenbot just pointed out Cody's first time fighting out of the U.S. That's interesting enough. You know, obviously Rongzu, if you were to look for something to cite, the experience, 24 years of age, a little bit bigger in the reach. So he's got a couple of things that you could point to as, you know, positive indicators. But ultimately, I just think there's levels to the game. And I think that Cody Steele, if this was a jiu-jitsu tournament, he'd be minus at the, like 10,000. You know what I mean? Like, so for that reason, I just feel like he's probably the rightful favorite. Maybe it's a little bit too wide given, you know, the UFC debut dynamics. All right, man, we can move along to the next one. And Rich, we can have you start us off on this. I did some tape on this fight before we got on the air, but ultimately I'll want to do a little bit more. These are two guys that are making their UFC debut in this spot. Alexandre Topuria, 5-1, the older brother of Ilia Topuria, the current champion at 145 pounds, rumored to be next up for Islam Makhachev. Interesting stuff. And then Colby Thickness on the other side. We got Volkanovski's crew member here in Thickness. And I did hear him say it himself. It is Thickness. Colby Thickness. What a name. What a man. What do you think is going to happen in this one, Rich?
Yeah, what a man. Well, I think he's going to get subbed. I'm sure the line is driven by Topuria, you know, being fucking brothers with the champ. He's dropping to 135. I suppose that's a good thing for him. They've both got poor competition. Thickness has got, you know, 3 times the amount of fights, but they're against nobodies, so I don't really put too much stock into that. Almost 2 years off for Topuria, so, you know, he's been away for a minute, but the fights that I've seen, he's got decent jiu-jitsu. You know, I've seen him pull up arm bars from bottom, try and hook up some triangles, so I think he's pretty slick with it. And then on the other side, this Thickness guy, it's usually the case when you come in on short notice out of nowhere, it's your way into the UFC. So I look to fade them by submission anyway, because they're just happy to be there. You know, take your L, come back next time on a full camp and then really kickstart your career. But I don't know whether this is true, but somebody pointed out in my fucking chat in the Discord that he's only getting a 1-fight deal for this. So I'm not even sure what the fuck that's all about. I don't know why he didn't, you know, leverage the fucking deal and say, you know, no, I want to start a 4-fight contract, but I don't think that's a good thing either. But yeah, this Thickness guy, he just looks like he looks soft, man. Like he's yeah, I won't even say it, but he looks soft. And I just think that when the going gets tough, he will get going. You know, it's his debut as well. I know it's Topuria's, but I just think, you know, rolling with his brother, he seems to have that arrogant air of fucking confidence about him, where I don't think the opportunity here will, you know, affect him as much as it will this Thickness guy. And he's a master of nothing. He seems to push the takedowns because he's not comfortable on the feet. And I just think that'll play into the wheelhouse of Topuria, throwing up these submissions. And I think he's going to catch him in an armbar or triangle pretty early as well, round 1 or 2.
Yeah, you know, this is an interesting one. When I watch Colby Thickness, you know, I think he is, I'm trying to think what the guy's name is that just fought. Let me go to Tapology and look at the weekend that just transpired. Guys, we look at so many fights that after the fights have occurred that weekend, they get flushed to the back of my memory and I move on to the next set of
You know what I'll say about him while you're looking at that, yeah? I watch these interviews now and they tell you so much. Like, I remember watching Izzy's interview and that's why I faded him. Like, he tells you something, but he's lying, like they're masking things. And the same with Umar. I was calling him like he's a closet. He looks like a closet gay or something. He's not like comfortable with himself. And it's the same with this Thickness, man. And that's why I call him like soft. He just doesn't look like he's made for fighting. He's not the same as his counterparts like Umar. Umar isn't built like the rest of them daggies. They're just different, man. So yeah, that's my other angle for fading him. Watching these interviews, listening to what they're saying, or the lies that they tell you, like Izzy, like, yeah, I'm ready to fight. And Izzy was talking about his legacy cemented, which just meant that he doesn't give a fuck about fighting anymore. It's for the paycheck. So, yeah, I think interviews really matter, man, and what these people are saying on fight week.
I definitely hear that. The person I was thinking of was Khan Offley. Khan Offley has some good skills, right? Stuart Nickel, another guy, had some decent skills. Was the physicality there when they got in a UFC level fight? Just wasn't, and I think that's the thing about Colby Thickness. When he takes people's back, he looks all right. He looks like a competent jiu-jitsu player, looks like he knows what he's doing, persistent about it, right? If he misses the first takedown, he doesn't just F off. He goes for another 2, 3, 5, whatever it takes to try and get his back take game going. Have I seen other guys take his back that are regional level guys at best? Yes. Have I seen him go out there and really struggle to get the takedowns on guys that don't look like they could sniff a UFC contract? Yes. So does it make me bullish on him going out there and beating Topuria? No. I think one thing that people sometimes get twisted, and again, I will eat my words if I'm wrong on the Topuria side. I'll do more research. But when you look, people would always say, this guy, Mo Usman, he's no Kamaru. And I was like, guys, who gives a Frenchman's flying fuck if he's not as good as Kamaru? He has to beat like Josh Parisian or somebody. It's like, he'll be all right. Like he could just be okay and just go do the job. And yeah. I think that when you look at Topuria here, I think what he brings to the table is that he looks like he's an athlete, right? He looks like he's got, to your point, a lot of confidence, goes out there throwing heavies on the feet. I don't think Thickness is down to get into a swinging match with Topuria. I think that would end really poorly for him. So I think that what he's probably going to try and do is force a lot of wrestling and grappling. And one thing that you see from Topuria's tape is he's whipping guys over to their back. He's getting on top of them with heavier hips, and he's holding them down and beating them up in the crucifix. So I think if Thickness, does the Mike Davis like random guard pull approach and just puts himself into grappling situations and ends up on his back, I think that's probably not going to end well for him either. I think he needs to get a back take. I think that's a lot of his win equity in this fight. Take the back, surprise this guy, maybe catch him out, for being out for 2 years or whatever, catch him cold, get him, early in the fight. I don't like what I've seen from Thickness in terms of his overall body of wrestling work to think he's going to go out there and beat Topuria. So for me, I thought Cody Haddon was going to probably do really bad things to him and expose him because I thought he could wrestle, grapple, keep the pace going really high. And if you've not been an active fighter, I thought that was going to be a problem. But then they subbed that guy out when they realized he was minus 250. They're like, hey, man, let's put you on ice for a week. We'll figure out something else for you. And let's bring in this Colby guy for a one-fight contract, like you mentioned. One thing that stood out to me before we move on to the next fight, Dana White had said, we're still looking to do Spain. We still want to make that a reality, and we want the Topuria brothers on the card. So he's already got a plan for what he wants to do with the Topuria brothers, and he's got Colby Thickness on a one-fight contract. That tells me everything I need to know. So if Colby Thickness goes out there and does the damn thing, great back take, I'll take my hat off to him, right? I'll clap it up for him. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to end well for him. All righty, man. Let's move on to the next one here. We got Kong Wang taking on Bruna Brasil. And I can't remember who went first on the last one. Rich, do you?
By all means, you go first. Or we can just skip it if you want.
I'll go first then. Listen, man, Kong Wang is coming off a loss where her arrogance was on full display, right? She was doing the gimmick at the weigh-ins. She was out there no-selling the offense of Gabriela Fernandez until she got hurt, until she got, exposed, and she got taken down. She got put in horrible positions. She ended up giving up. And did she look like a horrible fighter in that fight? No, she went out there and did some things right. She landed some good shots. She was having success on the feet, no doubt about it. Very comfortable flowing on the feet, but she doesn't have much respect for her opponent. And I think that when you look on the Bruna Brasil side, there's a world in which Bruna just gets steamrolled by this girl, right? Because we've kind of seen aggressive striker with some power can come steamroll Bruna Brasil, right? We saw that with Denise Gomes. But what have we seen subsequently? We've seen a little bit more aggression from Bruna Brasil. We've seen a little bit more willingness to engage in the wrestling and the grappling, the clinch work, try and take somebody down, try and leverage your size and not just get caught out at space, right? Because she uses the length okay in distance striking exchanges, but when somebody crashes into the pocket, she doesn't have great tools. So then what did she add for the McCann fight? Knee to the body, intercept people when they're coming in, try and grab a hold of them, try and wrestle them a little bit, grab a hold of their waist, throw them to the ground. And Kong Wang, as far as I'm concerned, not a super tested wrestler and grappler. Did a good job in the regional footage I've seen, but it's against terrible fighters. Now she's going against a Bruna Brazil who's 31 years of age. She's not ancient. She trains with, the Fighting Nerds, very good gym, and she's got 5 UFC fights under her belt. She's got 10-4-1 record as a professional. Kong Wang is 32 years of age, going on 33. She's 6-1 as a professional, not very deep into an MMA career. And her kickboxing and whatever accolades, they're all solid enough, right? She fought Valentina. That was a cool storyline. But has not the air been let out of the balloon, Rich? Like there was some hype around that fight until she loses to Gabriela Fernandez, who's like 2-2 in the promotion. And the air just went, and nobody cares anymore. Right. So for me, maybe she can get it all back with a huge head kick knockout or something. I do think she's live by KO. But if this fight goes to the cards, I think it's probably going to be a sweaty fight where Brazil probably gets a couple takedowns, gets out landed on the feet. And I think that if this fight ends via submission, it's a 50-50 fight for me. So again, it's probably a dog or pass situation and a big plus money number by Brazil's name. The Fighting Nerds and big plus money, like hard for me to ignore that.
Yeah, I think Fighting Nerds are good when they got men fighting, but not this. You've seen it with Silver, so that's to my point as well. She was shit. Brazil, at the time, I thought, yeah, she's improved. She's with Fighting Nerds. She beat Molly, but I think it was more of a case of Molly not showing up that night. I think it's lined correctly. I think Wang wins 30-27 quite easily. I think that she had point fight, go to decision. And I was never high on her anyway, man. I didn't think Fernandez would beat her. I didn't think she'd get a sub or anything. I thought it'd be another boring decision. I was waiting for somebody to proactively wrestle, but obviously Fernandez caught her with something, and fair play to her. But yeah, I think back to normal now. She comes in, point fights, makes it boring. Brazil would do a lateral movement. She'll try and counter strike. I think that's her only chance there. She doesn't have good finishing instincts. I don't think she's going to offensively wrestle like she should in this fight. And Wang, for me, is a complete I have to call her a retard, man. You're 32 and you're dressing up as the Joker. Like, we all like a good movie, but to it's not Halloween. It's just cringe. It's not cool. She's not cool. So fuck her. And I hope she loses, man. But she probably won't. It's going to be a decision.
I'm just not sleeping on Bruna Brazil here. I'm not high on her. I wasn't when she came off the Contender Series or anything. Like I've never been like Mr. Bruna Brazil, but after beating Molly, like Molly is 8-7 in the UFC, been around for a long time, and she was a significant favorite there. And Bruna went out there and kind of washed her pretty easily. So I just feel like got to put a little respect on her name after that. And meanwhile, Kong Wang is supposed to go out there and do the damn thing against Gabriela Fernandez, fumbles the bag, gets right back in there. She got hurt in that fight. It wasn't like she just got submitted, right? It's kind of like Michael Bisping, George St. Pierre, where he's talking about, yeah, I got choked out. Who cares? Dude, you got smashed with an elbow right before that, right? It's like you were clearly concussed when you got choked unconscious. But in any case, man, we can move along to the next one.
Yeah, I just say as well, I don't blame you for taking the shot.
Ahead.
I just say the only difference is in the Molly fight. Molly was charging forward like a ball. Molly was initiating the grappling and getting reversed, where this Kong Wang girl's gonna, be defensively sound in that respect. She's not going to initiate any grappling. So, she's gonna sprawl and really mind her P's and Q's to make sure she doesn't get taken down. And I just don't think Brazil's that strong in getting it to the mat. It's just Molly making her look good, in my opinion, but I understand what you're saying.
Hey, you know who's in Australia? Captain Caio Barajo, the captain of the Fighting Nerds. So
yeah,
y'all must have forgot. Fighting Nerds in the building, baby. If it sees 4-1 or something like that, it'll be hard for me to resist. But in any case, we can move along to the next one, man. We got Tom Nolan taking on Vyacheslav Borshev. And I can tell you the truth right off the rip here. This is a clear dogger pass for me. I see Slava Klaus as maybe the more technical striker, but how many times have we talked about before on this show, Rich? I don't care about how pretty you are, right? I care about how effective you are. Bogdan Grad looks like shit every fight before he kills somebody. God bless him for it. All right. I like watching him fight because he fights with a lot of risk taking. He's willing to go out there, try and take people down, try and horse them, whatever he has to do. If he's got to hit you with a big one-shot KO, okay. If I got to take you down, try and choke you out or beat you, unconscious, I'll do that too. Whatever it takes. Slava Claus, he's got pretty striking, very technical. He can hit you to the body hard, but most of the guys he's beaten in the UFC are poo-poo. They're just no good. Most of the guys that he's beaten in the UFC are terrible fighters that have been cut from the promotion. No disrespect. So then the guys that he's fought that are competent are normally either beating him, finishing him, putting him in a desperate situation, out wrestling him to the tune of like 10 takedowns to 0, things like that. The guy's got massive holes in his game, right? He's 33 years of age. Is he getting any better at this point in his career? Marginally at Team Alpha Male at this point where he's a coach more than he is an athlete. It's like, okay, what does he bring to the table? His chin is deteriorating rapidly, getting dropped brutally by Chase Hooper in the first exchange. I'm the biggest Chase Hooper guy in the world. You can't have that happen to you. If you're having that happen to you, got to pick a new career, right? Got to start figuring out some backup plans, right? Which is being the striking coach at Team Alpha Male, doing those things. Nothing wrong with that. But I don't think the guy's chin is all there. I think his grappling is not good. I think his wrestling is piss poor. So at the end of the day, I think that Tom Nolan could absolutely get clipped here, but if somebody wrestles and grapples to a victory, I think it's Tom Nolan. And if somebody gets slept in the first round, I think it's a 50-50 who that is. So give me Tom Nolan as the pick, and ultimately, I think he's the betting side as well. What do you think about this one, Rich? I think somebody's dying in 2.5 rounds,
Yeah, you said a lot of it, man. The chin's going of Slava, dropped by Hooper, been in many wars. The Nazim fight, that back and forth, he got fucked up, man. Yeah, he's an excellent striker, probably one of the best. He's got a diverse striking arsenal. He lacks wrestling, but Tom doesn't offensively wrestle. Not sure that he's smart enough to do it here. He's got the trip from Cali to Australia. Slava as well. Then he's got to make weight. That's not good on his side. He's the older fighter, 33. I'm going to bet Tom by submission. It's 750. I'll have a shot on that. And if the money line gets a bit wider, I might have some of that as well. But I don't like it as a fucking pick him like plus 110, plus 115 I see on the screen. Don't know what it is now. But yeah, I'd prefer like plus 150, plus 160 on Tom. That'd be nice. You just throw the knee down the middle as well. That's good. That could catch Slava on the chin. He's a big fucking tree, Tom. He's a tall fucker. So, yeah, it could be the knockout, but I'll risk the submission. I've done it before with him. So, yeah, I'll go back to the well, man.
I mean, when you talk about like on paper anthropomorphic advantages, he's 9 years younger. Pretty predictive, right? Let's say 8 to be conservative. He's 8 years younger. He's massively taller. He's got a huge reach advantage. He's southpaw versus orthodox. Like there's a lot of like indicators. If you read the book Fightnomics, there's a lot of pluses that are in your category right now on the Tom Nolan side. And I think very few on the Slava side, except that he's fun and he's got a cool nickname and he's been around, doing the dances for a long time, having fight of the night fights. What's the problem with fight of the night fights? You take a lot of fucking damage. The guy has been in these bang out, drag out wars every time out there. And now you're wondering why he's getting dropped by Chase Hooper the first punch that he lands, right? It's like, I think it's because the guy's been in a million wars in the gym and everywhere else. So for me, Tom Nolan at 24, you can afford to be in more damaging situations and keep pushing forward. And I just don't know that Slava could do that at this stage of the game, especially against a giant. So give me Tom Nolan.
Yeah, two of the four horsemen have picked Slava as well. So take that for what it's worth.
Hey, I wish everybody the best of luck. I'm no better than any man. I'm just here to do my level best. Next up, we've got Jack Jenkins versus Gabriel Santos. Why don't you start us off with this one, Rich? How do you feel?
Yeah, so many previous mushes, man. Slava was mush against Hooper. Fucking Jenkins was mush against Chepe. I think he's going to get fucked here by Santos. Santos on all the steroids in the world. With what's his name, Du Bronx. They've all got that aura there in that camp. I think the Murphy fight was a robbery. I think he's violent. Like I said, steroids. He's got BJJ, high volume, good cardio. So everything's on the Santos side, in my opinion. I don't like Jenkins. Bit of a point fighter, calf kicks. He's supposedly got a black belt. So based on that, I guess I'd go towards a Santos KO rather than a submission. But You don't really need to fuck about with that. You can take the ITD, it's around plus 200, plus 250, maybe then sprinkle either the KO or sub, but I think he gets Jenkins out of there. And it's the closing fight of the prelims as well. If you do your fucking history on that, they usually end ITD. So yeah, I like Santos and I like him to win. He's been sub twice actually, Jenkins. I got that wrote down here, so forget what I just said about the BJJ black belt. The sub's obviously very live, and he does take the back in most of his fights. Santos, he does go for takedowns, and he just put the body triangle in. So yeah, the sub's live, man.
This is interesting, man. I definitely see Gabriel Santos as a little bit more talented, a little bit more well-rounded. I think that what he does really well is he integrates the kicks on the feet. I think that when he gets into extended boxing exchanges, that's sometimes when you see him a little bit more vulnerable on the feet. I do think Jack could have some success landing in boxing range. I think he's a little bit maybe tighter with his boxing combinations. Got to be when you're a smaller fighter like he is. So I think that that's where Jack can compete in this fight. I think that we've already seen with Jack Jenkins, he could go out there and rob a close decision with a little bit of forward pressure, a little bit of mixing in, a handful of takedown attempts, working those short combinations. He kind of robbed Jamal Emmers. I remember I picked in that fight Jamal Emmers via split decision. When we did like the first look or whatever. And then I came back and I was like, maybe Jack is going to take it in a really close one. And it was just because he's kind of one of these guys that fights hard, stays pretty tough. I think what was it, like a broken arm or something that forced the fight to end with Chepe, just tough sledding, right? Like if you break your arm, you break your arm. So the younger guy here who I think is a little bit more well-rounded is Santos, but the guy who I think is probably going to get the nod if this goes to the cards on volume and on a little bit of, maybe hometown bias and things like that, I would lean towards the Jenkins side. I think the crowd's going to be behind him, but I think Santos is live for the submission. If I was to isolate where Jenkins is the most vulnerable, we talked about the arm break. He's also been choked, I believe. This is from memory. So I think he's been in a couple of vulnerable situations. And Gabriel Santos, I agree with you, good on the ground. He comes from a gym that's a little bit hit and miss for me, but I think he's one of the best products out of that gym. So for me, if this fight does go the distance, I like Jack Jenkins. If the fight ends ITD, I lean towards Gabriel Santos getting the job done and probably via submission. All right. Next up, my man, I'll lead us off on this one. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about Francisco Prado. I'm not a Jake Matthews guy. I'm typically a very anti-Jake Matthews guy. In terms of, I don't really like his attitude. I'm not really a Jake Matthews fan, but skill for skill, I think he's a way more skilled mixed martial artist than Francisco Prado. I think his grappling is levels above. I think Prado's a tough guy. I think that's where he's made his bones. I think at 22 years of age, the best thing for his career would be to lose this fight via submission in the first round, get cut from the promotion, and go back to the regionals and get some more experience. At 22, the guy just does not have it yet, in my view. And maybe at 170, things will be different, right? Maybe the cut to 155 was emaciating him. Maybe he walks around 195 pounds. But at 5'10", 69, 70-inch reach, he's just not a big guy for this division. Celtic kid, Jake Matthews, former 155-pounder. He's now been at 170 for a while. The guys he's losing to, big guys like Semmelsberger, like what's his name? Michael Morales. Those are big 170s, right? Like you could say what you want about Semmelsberger's skill or lack thereof, but he's a big guy. He hits pretty hard, right? Jake Matthews is a talented fighter and just like clear paths for me. Number one, he could go out there and bang with this guy on the feet, maybe take advantage of the fact that Zell Huber rung his bell 500 times. I think Jake Matthews has a little bit of pop in his hands. And on top of that, if he takes this fight to the mat, I think he's got a huge advantage. 22 years of age, dude, that's too young. If you're really talented, if you're really special, if you got a ton of skills behind you, you're a lifelong martial artist, maybe you can make it work at 22. But for the most part, you're not even a man yet, in terms of your man strength. 25 years of age is when men typically stop physically developing. So right now, you've got a Jake Matthews who's been fighting in the UFC for a short eternity against a Francisco Prado who's probably at a suboptimal weight class, got to fly halfway across the world to take on a guy who's been in 50 more meaningful fights than him. So for me, it's Jake Matthews, and I think he's going to submit him. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, everything you said, I'm just not sure about the submission because Jake rarely offensively grapples. You know, it's funny. He came into the UFC when he was like 21, and he was a grappler. That was his game: take people down, wrestle, fuck him. I even likened him to like GSP stupidly in the early years. You know, he had a great physique. He was on the steroids. He had good cardio, and yeah, he'd grapple fuck people and sub them, man. But he's fell in love with his hands over the years, especially after getting that knockout on Philo. So yeah, he likes to stand, man. So he's going to give Prado every chance, in my opinion. But like you said, he's still young. He's on the steroids. He's from ATT. We know what that camp's all about. I don't get why he's gone to welterweight. I understand, you know, what people are saying about the move. I just think it's laziness, man. Someone with his fucking, you know, height shouldn't be fucking at welterweight. I just think he can cut to lightweight if he wanted to do things right. Like you were saying, maybe the best thing is to lose this and go back to the regional circuit. I'm sure he wouldn't fucking like that. But I don't think welterweight's a good decision for him with his little T-Rex arms. He's a front runner, 6 wins, all by finish. The 2 fights that he lost are by decision. So, yeah, I guess that bodes well for your submission prediction. But, yeah, I don't know, man. I like Matthews to win. I just don't want to call a specific method out, man.
Yeah, I think the Argentinians are extremely tough, you know, as a class, right? Just like if you look at the class of fighters they brought to the UFC, skills hit and miss, but the toughness is like a universal quality. So for me, I think that, yeah, Pepe says hard to go back to the regional and make 2K a fight while living in a different country. Hey, I understand. But I do not love this matchmaking for him. I'll just leave it there. Matthews over 2.5 takedowns of lock Liam. I would certainly say no. Jake Matthews, there's no locks with Jake Matthews. Like there's no locks in life, but there's certainly no locks with Jake Matthews. I just have to call it the way I see it, right? Like if I saw it differently, I would say so. I'm not a Jake Matthews guy. And I think this is probably a fight that he should win. You know, if he wants to continue this UFC career thing that he's got going on, this is one that he's got to have in my view. So we can move on from there. Horrible main card, huh? But next up, we got Jimmy Crute taking on Rodolfo Bellato. And I think both these guys are completely fragile. And I think that the one thing I like about Bellato is that he's been a little bit more consistent with his activity. Seems like a guy who wants to be out there more. You know, we saw him take an absolute whooping from Ihor Potieria and then just decide like, hey, I'm still in it. Let's get back on top and win this fight. And he won it. But ultimately, this guy is, you know, just staggering all over the octagon, getting hit cleanly a lot. Defense, nothing to speak of. Ihor Potieria looked like a -1,000 favorite until he completely death-gassed in 3 minutes like he's wont to do. And then Jimmy Crute on the other side, like used to be a good UFC fighter, and he just hasn't been lately, right? Like you look at his recent run in the promotion, the guy has been washed out by Anthony Smith. He got owned by Alonzo Menifield twice. And if you look at the Alonzo Menifield fight that went to a majority draw, that's the only time that he has not gotten a win in Australia. This guy's been money in Australia. He's gone out there and printed, I think 3 and 1 no contest over there. But, you know, Rodolfo Bellato, a guy that is coming out, losses to Vitor Petrino, a guy that was like a fringe ranked guy until he got completely exposed by Anthony Smith and then fell off the face of the earth. And the other one was Ihor Potieria, who for all his faults, he did drop and hurt a couple guys. Like he landed a few good shots in the UFC. He just had no consistency or cardio or staying power or durability or any of the other attributes that you need. So my problem is I wanted to like Jimmy Crute in this spot. And I don't like hate the Jimmy Crute angle. Like, hey, he's still only 28. You know, he's got a good grappling skill set. He's probably not going to get run over by Bellato on the mat. So, you know, maybe he could keep this competitive. One good shot on the feet could be everything. But I just ultimately, I look at it and I'm like, a guy who's willing to retire at like 27, 28, probably not super about this life. We kind of seen Tyson Pedro, another guy, go out there, get 15 minutes of the memories and then ride off into the sunset. I just don't want to be on a fighter that I think has, you know, a chance of just checking out on the fight and not wanting to be in the ruckus. So for me, the under is what I would lean towards here. I don't think either one of these guys is very durable. I don't know that Jimmy Crute wants to be out there more than 8 minutes. So that's kind of the way I see this one. How about you, Rich?
Yeah, I guess it's the what's his mental game like now, Crute? Is he going to fucking bitch out a tiny bit of adversity in this fight? So that's going to be the worry if you're going to bet on him. The 2 years off as well. Pretty much everything you fucking mentioned, man. But I like Crute over this guy, even still. Bellato in that fight with Ihor, yeah, he nearly got knocked out in that. But it's not surprising, man. The guy was walking forward like a zombie, no head movement. It's like he fucking felt like he was invincible or something. He just pure reckless abandonment, just walking forward. And he paid the price, almost got finished himself, but Ihor gassed, trying to finish him. I just think Crute can catch him with something as well if he's going to, do the same thing every fight. His level of competition's poor as well. There's much more experience on the Crute side. And I just think that's going to pay dividends, man, in this one. And then the short notice, I do notice he's been training per Instagram, Bellato, but it is still short notice. It is still, him having to travel to Australia last minute and, fight on the main card against a local guy who has got good jiu-jitsu as well. That's a good thing to note. Crute does have good jiu-jitsu if he can get on top. He has been subbed before, though, when he's been the nail. I like Crute, especially at the price, man. So yeah, he's my pick.
Yeah, I feel really just undecided about this fight. I understand that Crute is a good submission grappler, but ultimately I don't like that he lost to Serkinov, who's like another just like glass cannon of the highest order. So I look at this fight and I'm like, I could just see it going either way. I think Bellato or Crute by KO is the most likely outcome.
Do you know what it is?
I think both of them could sub each other, but I think it's a lot less likely.
You just got to know what you're getting yourself in for, man. It's the same with Nolan and Slava. If you're going to bet Nolan, just be wary that you could get fucking bonked and knocked out. And it's the same with Crute. But yeah, if you like the price, take the risk in it. That's why it's called gambling.
Yep, know what you're signing up for. The one thing I did want to address, local man shakes fist, says leg injury equals rinsed. If you got a leg injury, because you step back and like your ACL gave out, it's one thing. But if you get a leg injury because I kick you in the leg like 20 times unobstructed in the first round, then I do blame you for your fight tactics. But admittedly, maybe washed was a strong word. The one thing I'll say is he was getting takedowns even after he got, his leg completely shut down. That just tells you more about Anthony Smith than anything else. But I think Jimmy Crute, tough guy, but just a guy that doesn't have very good defense. So he can get lit up on the feet. And that's the biggest vulnerability with him. But ultimately, the same thing is true of Bellato. So it's probably just going to be a banger. Somebody's going to die. One guy's plus 120, and he's the local hometown guy who's done well in Australia. So take that for whatever it's worth. For me, feels like a toss-up. I'd rather be on the under. Next up, we've got Thaleson Teixeira taking on Justin Tafa, bad man. And this seems like the UFC is trying to give Justin Tafa a winnable fight. I've said before the truth, which is that the Tafa brothers, some of the worst to ever do it. But they're also big swinging heavyweights. It's the heavyweight division where nobody's very good. So they're going to swing it out on the feet, take big risks, try and hurt each other. I think Teixeira, pretty good jiu-jitsu advantage here because he's a person that's done jiu-jitsu before. So he's got the advantage over Tafa. But then on top of that, he's actually good at jiu-jitsu and trains in the gi. So I think Thaleson Teixeira should have a huge grappling edge if he chooses to use it. Can he wrestle this guy? Your guess is as good as mine. I think wrestling a guy who's built, with that big body is not easy. But once you get them down once, the fight is over. So that's kind of the way that I see this one going down is Teixeira by sub or Tafa by knockout and probably early either way. Based on the way these two guys fight. A lot of tall man defense from Teixeira. Not the best defense you've ever seen on Contender Series. He was getting into a wild brawl. But I will say he doesn't have a bad chin from what I've seen. Like he goes out there and he's been in a couple fights where he gets touched and keeps going back at the guy and knocks him out. So again, you don't want to be getting touched on the regional scene and then come to the UFC and think you can get touched by heavyweights and be all right. But I haven't seen him get rocked and wobbled a lot. I've just seen him get touched on the chin in fights where he's taken a lot of chances against heavyweights. So he seems like a risk taker, a gambler, so to speak. What do you think about this one, Rich?
Yeah, I like I like Taliesin to fuck him up, man, and get him out of there. I see it differently from you. Like, you started off saying that they're trying to get Taffer a win. I think it's the other way around, man. I think they see this guy who's got injuries, pulling out of fights. His best wins are fucking Harry Hunsucker. Who was the other one? Green, Parker Porter. You know, they were low-level heavyweights, and then anyone who fought half decent fucking beat him. I think Taliesin's a dream, man, at heavyweight, and they're always short of heavyweights too. You got this fucking giant at 6'7", 8 fucking free reach. Get him a win, man. Give him another favorable matchup, and he could be something. Yeah, good guy to market. And like I said, on the other end, Taffer, always injured. He's a front runner, man. If the fight gets out of round 1, he loses. He pot shots as well. You know, he doesn't really go for combinations. I think that's to reserve his gas tank, because he knows he's a fat fuck, and he finds it hard to go the 3 rounds. Taliesin has been clipped. He doesn't use his range as much as he should. He peppers the jab out quite a lot. That's nice. Then follows up with the 2. Like you said, he does have BJJ. Let's hope he pushes that. That would be smart. What's the number on that while I'm fucking chatting, man, on fight numbers for the submission on Taliesin? I haven't even looked. Is it even out yet?
Let me take a look.
Yeah, he showed a good chin,
there's
man.
a lot of props for this fight.
He was getting cracked on that Dana White Contender Series because he was being, he's pushing forward too much pressure, throwing caution to the wind. So he has to be careful of that. But his chin held up well, man.
Absolutely. I want to say shout out to everybody who's rocking with us live. We got 366 people, 200 plus on X. If you guys are on X, go ahead and hit the retweet if you don't mind. Drop a like, whatever you could do to show a little love and support. We truly appreciate it. On the YouTube side of things, guys, make sure you smash that like button. We should have at least 100 likes if we got 130 people rocking with us live on YouTube. So appreciate all you guys for the support. Next up, we've got a title fight to break down. So without further ado, Zhang Weili, Tatianna Suarez. Would you like to start or me, Rich?
Yeah, let's go then. So I made Zhang. She's mushy of the week, and we've been killing it. Don't worry, I'm going to fall off a cliff and start losing. But at the minute, we're on a high. The mush of the week is cashing. Zhang's going to lose. She's going to get wrestle fucked. Suarez is probably the best women's MMA wrestler that's ever been in the UFC, in my opinion. She's good. She should have won the fucking belt ages ago, but obviously she got injured. She's now 34. You know, I'd rather that not be the case, but it is what it is. Yeah, I just think she's going to have a way in the wrestling, man. She is undefeated. She's got the metric advantage here. Some red flags on Suarez that I don't like that I've got written down here. She's never gone the 5 rounds, so who knows what she's going to be like in round 4 and 5, the championship rounds. She just cut to 115. You know, she is older now, 34. That can't be getting much easier for her. And then the travel to Australia, you got to think about that. And I think Australia do some weird, the weird weight cutting thing where it's like the same day or less time to rehydrate or whatever the fuck that whole shit is that they had with Islam. So there's that. She hasn't really faced adversity in her fights. The only time she did was against Nina in round 3. And I think she lost round 3 from what I was watching anyway. I didn't go and check the scorecards. But yeah, in round 3 against Nina, she slowed down Suarez. She was unable to get her takedowns. And on the feet, she was getting tagged. Luckily for her, Nina's got no power and she sucks. But obviously that's not the case with Zhang. So yeah, I like Suarez. But if this gets to round 4 and 5, I might look to hedge out a little bit because I got a sizable bet on Suarez. If I can get like Zhang at like plus 300, 400 because she's been fucking wrestled out for 3 rounds, 2 rounds, then I might hedge a little bit just in case Suarez falls off a cliff, can't get her takedown and gets lit up on the feet. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's a very low percentage. What I think is going to happen is Suarez just going to have a way with her, take her down at will whenever she wants. She likes to fucking go for the single leg and then hook her other leg around. That's like a go-to move. Push you against the cage as well, with the blast doubles. And Zhang, man, I think she's regressing. I know she's won fights and she won the belt back off Carla, but big whoop, man. She fought JJ. She was in retirement mode. She won the belt off Carla. Carla was in retirement mode. Then she fought Lemos. Lemos just couldn't get back up off her fucking ass, man, because she's got shit wrestling. So she held her down for 5 rounds and got the W. Fair play to her. But yeah, the Rose fight wasn't a good look. Rose took her down at will. And the most important thing is, in my opinion, if you're going to bet Suarez, that should fucking be music to your ears, is Zhang doesn't try and get back up, man. She's content to stay on her back. Like, her get-ups are really poor. So once she's down, that's the round. In round, I think it was 4 or 5 against Rose, she got took down within the first minute, and she stayed there, man. She was just doing these peppering shots. She looked like a fish, to be honest. She's not fight ready anymore. She's fighting at some fucking Asian gym. I don't even know the name of it. So that's not good. Fight ready is a decent gym. So yeah, what else can I say? Yeah, I think that's enough, man. I think we get a new champ, Suarez.
Well, I'm going to make it 2 for 2 on the Tatianna Suarez side. Listen, guys, I'm a Zhang Weili supporter. I was there when she lost the Rose fights. I thought she was going to win those fights. But at the end of the day, I think that what Zhang Weili has done very, very well is leverage her physical advantages over the division. There are not many women that are athletically capable like Zhang Weili. There are not many women that are as strong as Zhang Weili. There are not many women that are as explosive as Zhang Weili. Not as many women are as driven as Zhang Weili. So she's got a lot of intangibles that are very positive attributes. And you could do nothing but take your hat off to the champion and say, congratulations and great job. But we've seen her lose title fights, right? It's not like she's invincible. We've seen her go out there and get finished. We've seen her go out there and get out-hustled, out-wrestled by Rose Namajunas, right? And I think that Tatianna Suarez, when you look at how she's performed against common opposition, it's been domination, right? If you look at the Carla Esparza fight, that's the high watermark of Tatianna Suarez's career. Just an absolute assault of a former champion, made her look like she didn't belong in the same octagon. Now, Tatianna Suarez, what has she changed a little bit over time? She's become a little bit less wrestling oriented and a little bit more jiu-jitsu oriented. I think a lot of that has to do with the influence of one, Patchy Mix. And I've always said Patchy Mix, one of the most underrated fighters in MMA. Now he's finally rated, right? People are finally coming around. They're like, Patchy Mix, great fighter. I'm like, thank you. I agree with you. And when you look at Patchy, what does he do really well? Backpack and guillotine. If you look at what Tatianna Suarez has brought into her game, it is the implementation of not just wrestling to the legs, which she's always done very well, chain wrestling to the legs, but now she does a much better job of wrestling through the front headlock scenario. And when you look at how you dominate mixed martial arts contests, if you have a great front headlock game, if you got an ability to wrestle to the legs, that's a really good skill set for winning mixed martial arts fights. And the other thing about Tatianna is having great wrestling sets you up for good positions. Having great jiu-jitsu and great finishing skills is what sets you up to take people down, put yourself in a good position, and then finish the fight. And I think that when you look at Zhang Weili, she's been able to get away with some of her mistakes against lower level opponents, against opponents that didn't have the same physicality, that did not have the same abilities on the mat. And I think in this fight, she has now met a mirror match athletically, where I think Tatianna Suarez is as physical an athlete. She's 34 compared to 35 for the Zhang Weili side. She's the bigger athlete in terms of both height and reach. And when you look at Tatianna Suarez, she's also extremely skilled in these positions. It's not just physicality. I think Zhang Weili has gotten away with physicality because she hasn't been going against somebody with good enough technique. I think now she's going against somebody with good enough technique. And I think it's going to mean rubber hits the road here. So for me, it's Tatianna Suarez. It's a submission in the first 3 rounds, potentially ground and pound from on top. I could see that too. But I think Tatianna Suarez is going to put her in a bad position. I think she's going to take advantage. Somebody asked in the chat before, should I be looking at the guillotine prop? My one note of fear I would give you for that prop is that I do think she's very good at the seated katagatami. And that is technically a slightly different choke, right? You have the think Jack Hermanson team, right? When Jack Hermanson was submitting BJJ black belts, it wasn't quite a guillotine, right? There's a guillotine where I slip my hand under your neck. Now I connect to a grip, right? And I pull up. That's a guillotine choke. But if I get your arm involved as well, now I'm going to a seated head and arm choke, a seated katagatami. So that is a different choke And I don't know how they'll grade it at your sports books. I don't know how they'll read it off in the octagon.
They can't
That's
spell
the
it,
one
bro.
thing I would say about the exacta there. Go ahead, Rich.
No, I was just saying they can't even fucking spell that Katami shit. They just call it a guillotine, man.
Well, sometimes they call it like a head and arm choke, like a front head and arm choke, things like that. But it's basically that's the slight difference. You have an arm in guillotine. That's another slight difference, a slight variation of the hold. But in any case, I just think Tatianna Suarez, she's got a front headlock game with several iterations that could get her the submission here. So I think that's what it's going to be.
Do you know what I say, man? Why I don't like the submission for Suarez? I prefer the TKO or the decision because Zhang doesn't get back up, so she won't give her, them transitions. And then when I've seen Suarez with girls who don't do that and they stay on her back, like Rose didn't give her those opportunities. She gets her in the crucifix. She, does some ground and pound. She's happy to lay on her and, win minutes. And maybe she will here, it's a title fight. She's desperate to win. She might not want to, go for these transitions where she could give up position and be on her back, trying to go for a guillotine. So yeah, that's why I was cautious, man, not to go for the submission. So yeah, that's all I got to add.
I will say I bet her by TKO and TKO round 2 in the Andrade fight, I think it was. And she was beating up Andrade and then caught her in a bad situation and finished her. The thing that I would say about Tatianna is the front headlock snap down. She's just getting really good at that situation. That's the reason why I like it. But I agree with you. Zhang normally does a pretty decent job of just flat backing herself and staying safe, but that's a good way to give up rounds. So could I see it being a decision? Yeah, I wouldn't rule that out. But ultimately, I think Tatianna is a finisher. And I think she's just built to be really aggro. And never stop pushing the pace. So I think if she does that, she could break Zhang Weili, who hasn't really been pushed like that. Most of the time, she's the one that's picking up the pace, that's deciding when people have to go. And I think in this fight, it's going to be all different. So the other thing is I see some people saying, Clint already mushed this in the chat. I always make my picks, and this is me personally. Everybody's got their own process. I make my picks based on what I think, what I believe, and I don't care what other people think. I don't care what other people believe. And the times that I've lived with the most regret in my betting life is when I've cared about what people thought. Last week, I saw somebody very, very sharp that I really respect. Dagestan Papi had a big bet on Lucas Alexander, and it did make me hesitate to click on Bogdangrad. He got a plus 150 or whatever on Lucas Alexander. It closed Lucas Alexander a slight favorite, right? So he did his job. He got a great number, but it did make me sit on my hands a little bit. I was like, man, should I really click the Bogdangrad side? And then the exact fight that I saw played out. Trust your gut, trust your read. Fuck what anybody else has in the world. If you believe in it, believe in it. That's it. So as far as I'm concerned, I believed in Tatianna Suarez when people were telling me she was never going to come back and fight for a belt. So y'all can, tell me who's on this and that. I don't give a fuck, right? At the end of the day, it's my belief. So I got to just trust my gut. And if Clint wins, God bless him, right? That's what all of us should be thinking. Not, he mushed my bet. He's just living his life, right? And if he's on a bet and you're on the same bet, you should ask yourself, is there something wrong with my process? Did I get it wrong? Or is he right about this? That's all you have to ask. Don't be rude. So shout out to our guy, Clint. I've got nothing but love and respect for everybody that puts their ass in the jackpot publicly each and every week, coming out here and making these picks. It ain't easy.
Yeah, I say you're a fucking idiot if you're making a bet like based on what somebody else is doing with their life. Like the mush is a funny thing, man, just for some fucking a bit of clout, a bit of fun. But then I'd also say as well, a squirrel sometimes gets the nut, so fade everything else that he's betting. If that's your thing. But yeah, back to Liam's point, man. You don't fucking make a bet just because somebody else is on the opposite side or whatever. Do your own thing, man.
And I can just tell you guys, like, I don't know how close you guys pay attention to the gambling, like, broader ecosystem, but I can just tell you, the sports books in Vegas got crushed to the tunes of like millions and billions of dollars in December on NFL public favorites and shit. It's like sometimes the sports book loses, sometimes the public wins. So it's not to say that you should ride with the public every time, or I'm just saying everything is a case-by-case basis, and you should try and just cap top down, bottom up, based on your own research, based on your own understanding, and then let the cards fall where they may. Like Rich said, it is gambling at the end of the day, but you want to try and put yourself in a smart position, right? And for me, I did my research. I like Tatianna Suarez, and that's the way that it is. Next up, finally, Dricus Du Plessis, Sean Strickland, the rematch, it shall be done. I'll start us off on this one. I rewatched this fight today. On rewatch, I got Dricus Du Plessis winning the fight 48-47. It was an interesting fight. I saw bookend rounds for Sean Strickland. I thought he won the first round. I thought he won the fifth round. I thought Dricus Du Plessis won rounds 2 through 4. And I thought he did it with his wrestling pressure. I thought he did it with his ability to come forward at all times, no matter the pressure that Sean tried to put on him. Sean would be retreating, throw a double jab, try and step off, throw a combination, and you just never saw Dricus take a backward step, man. He walked him down all night long, kept moving forward, and Sean could not get his foot back on the gas. You know, you saw early in the fight, he was doing a good job chipping away, using that jab, kind of lighting Dricus up. He definitely swole up his face. He had a lot of success with the jab throughout the course of the fight. And, you know, we even saw Dricus give him a little bit of respect when he would land that 2 behind it. But ultimately, the thing that Sean Strickland did best, in my view, rewatching the fight, is he made Dricus miss a lot. You know, he made Dricus hit the air a lot. He does a lot of retreating with, it looks very sloppy, right? If you look at a lot of things Sean does, they look wrong, right? They look functionally improper, but they are quite effective. And you hear guys like Israel, you hear guys like Dricus talk about after the fact, it's not easy to hit this guy. Like, you come forward, you try really hard, you throw big shots at him, but he does a good job of just touching it away, slapping it at the last second, putting a hand on it, misdirecting it just a little bit. So that way it landed, but it landed with a slight graze off the side of his head. And whatever, not a lot lands flush on Sean Strickland if you throw to his head. If you throw to his legs, he does a really good job checking kicks. He does a really good job retracting his legs. There's a lot of things he does very well. He sees things coming. But what you need to do is get him backing up, get him reacting, get him in a defensive shell, and touch him to the body. Because the one thing about Sean's style is it is not built to deal with body work. If you look at Sean, he's got a very upright stance. He's got a high guard. He's moving backwards, retreating with his head over his heels. That is not good defense for your body. That's good defense upstairs most of the time, right? Except against Alex. What did Alex do? Body jab, body jab, body jab, until his hands came down. He said, I will make you respect this fucking body jab. You want to keep your hands up all night? No problem. Ha, 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 all night with that. And then what happened? He dropped his hands and he got killed with a left hook. That's what happened. You look back, the guys that have gotten Sean Strickland to get out of his defensive rhythm, they've targeted his body first, then they go upstairs to the head. And I think Dricus Du Plessis came out last time throwing a lot to the legs and a lot to the head with that high kick. He was going high kicks all night. I think he needs to take his work to the body. I think he needs to do it with his legs. I think he needs to do it with his hands. I think he needs to use the jab, not to try and headhunt Sean. What Sean does really well is jab you in the face. You're going to get jabbed. Jab him to the body. Make him pay for every jab that he wants to go. Go jab for jab with solar plexus shots, and you will win the fight. That is, for me, the Dricus Du Plessis path to victory. How he makes it a more clear and dominant victory is he either wrestles more effectively, right? What I mean by that is leveraging each takedown to try and get more control, to be more dominant on the ground. The thing about Strickland is I rewatched the tape. The guy is pretty sound defensively about getting back up to his feet. I know a lot of people are talking about the sub. I talked about the sub with the Adesanya fight. I picked Du Plessis by submission. I think in round 3, he got it in round 4, the rat bastard. But you look back, I was all over that. Against Sean, Sean's not easy to submit, period, point blank. You look at the guy's career, and he's just very defensively sound with his hand positioning, with fighting hands. You're going to have to hurt this guy, in my view, to finish him on the mat, right? So if he gets really rocked and then Dricus jumps on his back, takes his neck, okay, fair play. But other than that, like, I just do not see Dricus submitting him based on what I saw last time out. Could I see him like beating him up on the ground, breaking his will a little bit, you know, maybe getting a ground and pound finish at some point? Maybe, but I just don't see a submission materializing. Sean's not that guy. He's not the kind of guy who's going to tap. You're probably going to have to put him to sleep. So I just look at this and say, okay, Dricus last time out got the, what's it called? The close decision, right? But he did get outlanded. Sean Strickland has outlanded 18 out of 22 UFC opponents at distance on significant strikes. That's a really impressive feat. You know, a lot of that was at 170 and 185, like 2 competitive weight classes. He's done a pretty good job of distancing himself from his opponents. Hasn't won all those fights, but has outlanded just about everybody along the way. The guys that have outlanded him normally took him down, right? Like they took him down multiple times. Kamaru Usman, you think back to that fight. I think Ponzinibbio, same thing. But then you look at this guy's been around for a really long time. He's now 33 years of age. This is the last time he's fighting for the title if he loses this one in all likelihood. So Sean's kind of got to go right now. And when you look at the Du Plessis side, he's a guy that's been hurt before. He's won and lost rematches, right? He's kind of been on both sides of the spectrum. So he does seem to me like a guy who's extremely talented, but I like him at plus money. I like him at minus 110. Minus 210, it's just a really tough price to get behind when Sean went out there and competed super close last time. I told you, I thought Du Plessis won the fight. I bet on Du Plessis. I picked him against Adesanya. I picked him against Brad Tavares, plus 108 underdog there too. You know, the only time I bet against him was Darren Till, who, by the way, beat the absolute shit out of him. And then he had the takedown defense of a middle schooler. And so he couldn't do nothing about it. Every time this guy would go for a takedown, it's back to the floor. It's back to a bad position for this guy. Sean Strickland, you could say that he's not the best wrestler or the best grappler and that he's had some suspect moments in these fights. But, dude, he's just really hard to hold down. Like, by the facts, by the evidence, like, Du Plessis is a horse on top. He took Robert Whittaker and threw him around on the ground, beat him up, took his lunch money like he was a school bully. And Sean Strickland just kept getting back up to his feet. So for me, this feels like a fight where if Du Plessis is not able to hurt Sean Strickland, it's probably going to be another close competitive decision. That's the way I see this one going. So ultimately, I think Du Plessis is the more powerful striker. I think that was a difference between them the first time as well. But you got to be able to connect. I think if he's a smart fighter, as smart as I think he is, as well trained as I think he is, I think they're going to try and torture Sean's body in this fight, make him start making bad decisions, and then go upstairs with big shots. I think that's the way to take him out. But if you look back, Sean Strickland in Australia got a huge crowd reaction against Izzy. They were all behind him. He won the title there. He went out there and competed hard for 5 rounds. He hurt Izzy early on. The guy is not a bad fighter. And to see Du Plessis go out there and struggle with Adesanya in a way that Imavov just cleaned him up in 7 minutes, I just start to think to myself, I'm like, Du Plessis, very good fighter. But I said in my bold predictions for this year that I thought he was going to lose the belt at some point to a superior grappler this year, whether that's Khamzat Chimaev, whether that's Caio Barajo, whether that's Nasruddin Imava. I'm kidding. But you just look back, it's like, I thought somebody was going to have the goods to maybe take this belt from him, as good as Du Plessis is. Do I think it's Sean Strickland? No. But can I see him winning based on rewatching that fight? Yeah. And you're getting a big plus money price associated with it. So for me, I'd probably be looking at the violence side or the Strickland money line, something like that. But ultimately, I lean towards Du Plessis. So I'll probably just keep my hands clean of this one. But I'm curious to hear what you think about this one, Rich. I wanted to like Du Plessis more here, but when I rewatched the fight, I'm not a Sean Strickland guy. He's a good fighter, and he's not an easy guy to look good against most of the time. So good fight.
Yeah, I like Du Plessis to win. I don't like the money line, so I won't be betting that. I don't think he can sub Sean. I don't think that's a possibility in this one. I think he's going to knock him out, and I think it'd be a left high kick. Yeah, I was surprised by Sean, man. Like, I don't listen to his shit anymore because I just know what his narrative's going to be. Just talking some wild, crazy shit. But I listened to his interview with Brett Okamoto. He did like a 20-minute fucking thing with him, and he surprised me, man. Like, with his victimhood mentality, he was talking about like growing up. Basically just got daddy issues, man. Growing up, this and that. And then he was talking about the fight, and he was talking about a headbutt that happened, and he said that changed the course of the fight. He got blood in his eye. So when I watched the fight, I didn't see no headbutt. I seen him get elbowed off a break, and then there was some blood in his eye. And then I seen him go to shit. The blood probably did impair his vision or whatnot, but I just think it discouraged him along with the takedowns. And I think he's been fortunate up until that first fight with Plessis, where nobody's tried to take him down. You look at the Izzy fight, it was just a good stylistic matchup for him. Obviously, Izzy was half checked out there like he has been for his last couple of fights as well. That helped. But yeah, the fact that people haven't tried taking Sean down has been very beneficial for him. I don't think that he likes the wrestling. I don't think he will offensively do it. That's not his style. It used to be back in the day, he'd mix in some takedowns, but since he had that motorcycle accident back in the day and come back and started with Jack Marsham and whatever and went on that run, he doesn't offensively wrestle, man. He likes to stand. He could go 10 rounds. He could go 20 rounds if you let him do his thing. But if you mix in the wrestling, it will deplete his cardio. It happened in the first fight. Yeah, he can get back to his feet. You know, he's got some good technical ability. He's at Extreme Couture. I'm sure he's had many sessions where, you know, he's done wrestling and, you know, practice that. But he doesn't like it, man. And I think he gets discouraged, gets in his own head. And I think that's what's going to happen here. You know, he's going to be like, oh, I'm going to lose the belt again. Get discouraged, get pissed off, start making excuses to himself like he did about this fucking phantom headbutt and the blood and whatnot. And yeah, I think it's going to also deplete his cardio. And it's just ironic, man, because that was Plessis's whole thing when he came into the UFC, and that's why everyone thought he was shit. I bet against him a couple of times by ITD because I thought this guy can't even go 3 rounds. But here he is going 5. You know, something's fucking changed. Maybe he's on supplements. Who knows? I think he even referenced some fucking nose thing that he had or something in the past. But yeah, the guy can go 5 rounds now. That's all I know. He's good everywhere. He made adjustments in the first fight. You know, he was winging these overhand rights in the first round that wasn't reaching him. It only took a round for him to adjust that, and then he started finding his range. And he grew into the fight, man. So 2 fights are never usually the same. I don't think it's going to decision. I don't think Plessis can sub him. So I like the KO. And you can get either by KO if you just want to be sure. You can get that at like plus 250 or something. But yeah, Plessis, man, to retain the belt. And then Strickland to fuck off because I'm just tired of his whole boring narrative and his whole, you know, these extreme views that I just don't want to hear anymore. I'm just over it. So yeah, Plessis for the win, man.
Yeah, I'm the opposite of a Strickland guy, but you just look at his fighting, right? Like outside of his persona and everything else, like he's just a pretty tough guy to beat consistently in fighting, right? Like Alex Pereira, kind of uniquely built to beat him, draws out his attacks really easy, able to beat him up to the body, a huge guy, you know, able to read all of his kickboxing shit, not going to engage with him in grappling, like just really kind of a good fight for Alex in hindsight. And I picked Alex plus 115 there, right? Sean was favored to beat Pereira at the time. And if you look back at the last fight, again, Sean goes from being like, you know, basically a pick-em price with Du Plessis to now he's a big underdog. And it wasn't like the fight played out like it was like a wash. So that's the one thing that makes me keen on this. Here's the other credence I wanted to give to Sean Strickland. If you're asking yourself, like, what could Sean Strickland realistically do to get better? I think working with Caio Barajo, working with fighting nerds about getting back to your feet quicker is essential, right? He did a pretty good job of it, but like you mentioned, kind of wore down later in the fight. He was kind of dogging it a little bit more, taking a little bit longer to get up. He was getting slower there. I think that when you look at this guy, he does seem like he's dialed in. He seems like he's been drilling a lot of back escapes and shit like that. So I do think he is the same goofball, you know, weirdo that went out there and could have finished Uriah Hall, but wanted to fight for 5 rounds. He's got weird tendencies. There's some strange things about him. Israel Adesanya, he could have finished that guy, and he took the foot off the gas. He wanted to be out there for 5 rounds. He's that kind of guy. But over 5 rounds, like there's nobody that's going to throw more volume than him, you know, outside of Marab. And it's like, it's just not happening. So I feel like unless Du Plessis is able to hurt him, it's going to be another very close fight. So very close fight, plus 170. Normally not the way I see, you know, mixed martial arts lines. And especially this is a title fight. This is a high level fight, 2 elite guys, 2 guys that are at the top of the division. And as much as I rate Du Plessis, I've been rating him for a long time. Go back and watch that Darren Till fight. If you guys like haven't seen that one lately, go see the horrifying, disturbing things. The guy has made a ton of mistakes in his career and overcame it because he's really talented and because he works really hard. He doesn't give up on himself. But guys, he's flat backed himself multiple times going for takedowns. I don't think Sean Strickland is taking him down with like good techniques and nice doubles and singles or something like that. But could I see Du Plessis getting greedy in the clinch and going for a big throw and just flat backing himself into the full mount? He's literally done it before in the UFC. So for as good as the guy is, for as good as his win streak is, all those things, I would just put a little bit of caution out there. And you guys know I've been a huge Du Plessis supporter. Bet him plus 300 against Robert Whittaker. How the times have changed. I think that he is a guy that's going to be around this top 5 for a little while. But I think the belt could change hands here at middleweight a few times. And I think Khamzat Chimaev waiting in the wings for either one of these guys is probably going to smash them in their next fight. So God bless them. Should be fun and exciting. Rich, let the people know where they can find you. Anything else you want to get off your chest, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, catch me on Twitter. Always trying to be funny on there. Got some links in the bio for my Patreon and Discord group if you want my bets. I'll be on Cody's show on Thursday, Wager Wars against Jeffrey Dahmer. So tune in for that one. And yeah, that's it, man.
We got the great Nate just became a channel member. Going to have updates for channel members and Patreon today with the navigation document for this week. Busy week of wrestling as well. Wrestling season's winding down, guys. And then I'll be able to divert a lot more attention back to the fights. And in terms of staying active on Saturdays during the fights, I've been coaching wrestling tournaments and looking at the fights on my phone on the side between matches and things like that. And we're about to have a little bit more focused attention. So I'm super excited. I appreciate everybody for taking the time. If you're looking for links for me and Rich, they're all down in the description box below. If you've got more to say that we haven't covered yet on the show, go ahead and hit us up in the comment section down below. We try and be responsive there. And peace, love, and chicken grease. God bless you all. Good luck on all your bets. Come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.